Hello everyone, welcome to Toon Runes, the show that overanalyzes cartoons both old and new to give you guys the answers to questions you've always asked. And today we're going to continue the conversation on everyone's favorite controversial mom, Rose Quartz. But before we get into that, I just wanted to remind everyone to hit that bell icon to receive notifications from me of when I upload so that you don't miss when I post new content. Today's featured fan art is by Alexandra Vieira on Twitter. If you have fan art that you want me to see and feature on the channel, you can send it to me on any of the social media sites provided below or on the community Discord. Now that we got all of that out of the way, it's time to get onto the video. Quick spoiler warning as well if for some reason you still haven't seen the episodes Can't Go Back and A Single Pale Rose. If you haven't seen them yet, this is your only warning. Now the video that I posted about a week ago on why I like the Rose and Pink Diamond plot twist has blown up in terms of the number of views. And for that, I'm thankful. And with a lot of views comes a wide range of opinions and criticisms on my opinions, which I'm also thankful for, even if they can be a little bit overwhelming at times. Upon getting this wide range of comments and perspectives, I realized that there was a certain part of this video that I needed to go more in depth on. And that part of the video was where I was talking about Rose Quartz and her empathy, or lack thereof. And a lot of you had very interesting counter arguments to my opinions on this segment, and I wanted to address them and elaborate my thoughts further. And this is why today's video is an in-depth discussion of Rose Quartz, otherwise known as Pink Diamond. Was she a good person? Was she a bad person? Well, I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. Remember that I usually post polls in the community section of my channel after every video, so if you'd like to participate in the vote, head over there after watching the video. Without further ado, let's get into this. One of the main points that I made in the video was that Rose lacked empathy and had a hard time understanding it, and to that, my stance still stands. Rose very obviously had a hard time understanding the feelings and emotions of other beings, as only proven by the episode We Need to Talk. That interaction with Greg really only further proves how foreign understanding others is to her, especially when it comes to humans. The entire "I love humans, you're all so funny" line personally hit it home for me. Now, does lack of empathy make Rose a bad person automatically? Of course not. There are plenty of good people who have a hard time relating to and understanding other people in their situations. Does her lacking empathy or having a hard time understanding others' emotions make her incapable of love? No, of course not. You can still love someone and be apathetic towards them and their problems. It happens all the time in relationships, both romantic and platonic. Being apathetic alone doesn't make you a bad person, and that wasn't what I was trying to imply within the video, and I apologize if that's the way it came off to people. It was Rose's actions due to her lack of empathy that led to my conclusion that she's not such a great person. But it's important to note after reflecting on the comments section of that video that there is much more at play here than just her lack of empathy. I also wanted to clarify that I don't think Rose has no empathy whatsoever. I do think that over time, especially after meeting Greg, she started to be more understanding towards others' feelings. However, there is a lot of evidence that she, especially in the past, had very little care as to how her actions affected others. And we're going to get into all of those reasons and their counter-arguments right now. The first piece of evidence we have that Rose has a lack of empathy is her treatment towards Pearl. Now, it's common knowledge at this point that Pearl was romantically in love with Rose, to a point that I would genuinely argue was obsessive and unhealthy. We also know that Rose was well aware of this fact. Yet we know from Pearl that Greg wasn't the first and only man for Rose to be with. It's implied that she was with many more men before him in Mr. Greg, as well as in Your Mother and Mine. This very obviously messed a lot with Pearl's head and has gotten her to the point where her mental health has been destroyed from it. And I do think that Rose genuinely loved Pearl back romantically, but obviously not to the same level that Pearl loved her. And not returning Pearl's love to the same degree doesn't make Rose a bad person, because she can't help how much she loved her back. What's bad is how she went about this, and from what we've seen shows us that she's very apathetic to Pearl's pain involving her. There's nothing wrong with being polyamorous, which is what Rose is implied to be, but it's wrong when that polyamory isn't consensual. If you're polyamorous and in a relationship with someone, you need to make sure that the person who you're dating is okay with you dating other people. In Rose and Pearl's case, Pearl obviously was not okay with it. And knowing Pearl, she probably lied and said she was okay with things that she actually wasn't okay with because of how much she loved Rose. And Rose isn't a mind reader, no. But you can also very obviously see how torn up Pearl is about the entire situation, and you can obviously see that she isn't comfortable with Rose being romantically involved with other people. But Rose seems to lack the empathy to pick up on these things, which should be obvious to her. Alternatively, if she was aware of Pearl not being okay with this and did it anyways, this also proves her lack of empathy even further, at least when it comes to understanding Pearl's emotions and feelings on the subject. Pushing even further past this, we can talk about her lack of empathy towards the crystal gems as a whole. Having Steven was both a selfless and selfish thing at the same time, and that entire situation itself is complicated to hell and back, but we're going to go over it nonetheless. The idea of bringing a child into the world in of itself is something wonderful. Even if it ends in your death, It's bittersweet because you've created an entirely new being. However, the problem comes along with Rose's status as the leader of the rebellion. Even though nothing big and bad was happening on Earth at the time to our knowledge, she was still the leader of the Crystal Gems. Having Steven still resulted in her leaving them entirely. Even though Garnet is a wonderful leader, we found out in later seasons that she's lost and scared. She doesn't know what she's doing, or at least she doesn't feel that she does. The stress of being a leader has proven multiple times to be too much to her, to the point where she admits that she's having difficulty with her future vision because of all the stress. She can't stand people looking to her for guidance 24/7, especially with the ever-looming threat of the diamonds. It certainly also doesn't help that up until recently she didn't know the full truth about Rose. Even if Rose was entirely unaware that Earth was still in danger, it was still somewhat selfish of her to have Steven knowing full well what would happen to her. And maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if she told Garnet and Amethyst the truth about who she was so that they can defuse any potential danger, but instead she decided to keep her true identity a secret, knowing full well that Pearl was entirely incapable of telling them herself. She then left her physical form and gave her gem to Steven, effectively completely erasing any chance to discover the truth at all. Which in my opinion was awful of her to do. At the very least, she should have told them who she was before disappearing so that they at least knew who she actually was. Taking that secret to her grave when she had absolutely nothing to lose, I think, is the most selfish action that she did through this entire mess. I mean, what would have happened if she told them? If they were upset with her, it wouldn't have mattered if she was going to disappear anyways. I get that she might not have wanted to tell them because the initial shock and stress it would cause in addition to Steven's arrival, but I think them finding out now is more stressful than it would have been had she just told them. Adding to the subject of Steven's birth, the major motives behind Rose wanting to have Steven are unclear. According to Greg, she had Steven because she wanted to have a child with him. However, given Rose's past of changing her forms and changing her alias, it could also possibly be because she wants to escape the problems that she's accumulated as both Rose Quartz and Pink Diamond, which isn't too far-fetched to believe given what we know about Rose at this point, and unfortunately that seems to be what Steven thinks as well. Personally, I do think her reasoning behind having Steven is a mixture of both, but I can't say for certain whether or not she had him for selfish reasons. I feel like we still don't have a good grasp on Rose as a character, so knowing her motives on having Steven at this point is unclear. I do believe that she had the best intentions when having him, however. I also have no doubt that she loved Greg just as much as she loved Steven while she was pregnant with him, though given her past, her best intentions never turn out the way she wants or expects them to. And this is why I think it can be really taken either way at this point. I believe that the point of this reveal was to make us and the characters question Rose and her motives, and to make us also reevaluate her as a character. So if the answer is unclear, then that's probably what they've intended it to be. We still have yet to get a firm understanding of who she was after all, and we're still missing a huge fraction of the story when it comes to her deciding to have Steven and what led up to it. But it is important to note that the long-standing theory is that she decided to become Steven in order to get a better grasp on humans and their emotions. She was infatuated and fascinated by humans, so I don't really think that this theory or matter of thinking is too far out there. It is possible that she decided to have and, in a way, become part of Steven in attempts to become part human and understand humans better. Though, do I think she had an ulterior motive past that? No, I don't think that Rose did anything maliciously, especially not when in relation to Steven. However, my biggest point in the video was her not being a good person because of her fabricating her own shattering, and this seemed to be where the majority of you disagreed with me. After further thinking about what you guys said in the comments section, I do have a slightly different opinion on Rose's overall motives. While I do believe that escaping her responsibility as a diamond was a contributing factor to her wanting to fake her own death, there is more than that to it. I don't think that Rose's main motivation was to escape being Pink Diamond, though as I just stated, it did play a part. Now, while Garnet didn't know the truth and was likely only repeating what was told to her as far as Rose's origin story, I do think that there is some truth to it. She stated that Rose had found that there was life on Earth and that she fell in love with it. And I do think that to an extent that was what happened with Pink Diamond. I do think that she did fall in love with the Earth, or at the very least what the Earth was able to provide for her, and that the Earth was able to provide her with freedom. However, I do believe that how Rose was in love with the planet was flawed. She sees humans how we see puppies or kittens. She sees them as cute beings that are interesting enough to entertain her and have value because of that. This is only further proven by the existence of the human zoo. So while yes, she was in love with the Earth, it wasn't for the pure reasons that Garnet and the rest of us were led to believe. Is it still good that she wanted to protect the Earth because she loved it even though her reason for loving it was flawed? Yes, of course it was. But it doesn't make Rose some innocent, unflawed being that was pure and because of being pure wanted to protect the Earth. I do think that she had the best intentions in mind when rebelling and attempting to protect the planet, but it was poorly thought out and executed. I don't think that she properly weighed the risk and the outcome. As I mentioned in the last video, gems were shattered, corrupted, and made into forced fusion experiments. While I do think that some gems being shattered was inevitable, corruption and forced fusion was something that never would have happened had Rose stayed as Pink Diamond. And I say this because if Rose rebelled as a diamond, they never would have all agreed to do the damage of the diamonds to the Earth, and they wouldn't have used it to make the cluster. So there wouldn't have been any forced fusion experiments. It's rather obvious that Blue and Yellow Diamond cared about Pink Diamond, so doing these two things could potentially kill her, so they wouldn't have done it. They only did these two things because they didn't care about the gems that made up the crystal gems, and they hated Rose Quartz. I honestly don't think that these two things would have happened if Rose Quartz kept her identity as a diamond intact. I do understand that it's hinted at that Blue and Yellow Diamond wouldn't listen to reason, so Pink thought that this was the best option, but I really don't think that it was personally. It seemed like Pink didn't trust Blue and Yellow enough to say that she herself wanted to keep the planet intact, so she came up with excuses. She figured that maybe with those excuses in mind, that it would somehow convince Blue and Yellow to allow her to leave the planet alone. However, in avoiding this conversation with the diamonds and coming up with a plethora of excuses, she didn't do what she should have. She should have told Blue and Yellow that keeping the planet intact was what she wanted and not what the rebels wanted. She lied to them so much to make them into thinking that she'd lost control of the situation when she hadn't. In reality, she had full control of the situation, but she failed to tell the truth to the diamonds. Now, is it possible that they would have continued to ignore her? Yes. Is it possible that they would have taken Earth from her? Yes. But to our knowledge, and as of right now, she only said that she was having problems with the rebels, not that she wanted Earth to be saved because of its organic life. I genuinely think that if Pink Diamond herself rebelled, that the corruption and forced fusion would have not happened. Not to mention, you wouldn't have gems like Jasper who base the rest of their lives on getting revenge. As mentioned in the last video, Jasper's entire being after Pink Diamond's shattering was to get revenge on Rose Quartz. She's been through so much pain and suffering because of this, and so have the diamonds. All of this could have been avoided if Pink told Blue and Yellow what was going on, or at least tried to, instead of defaulting to excuses, which is what is implied she did. And tacking on to the point that I made in my last video as well, I do think that some of this is her wanting to escape her diamond responsibilities. What we've seen with Rose in the past is that she always does what she wants, and being a diamond kind of detracts from her ability to do so. Even if she were to rebel, the gems rebelling would still treat her as a diamond. If she were to get rid of her identity as a diamond, this would eliminate that problem. However, on the flip side, it is possible that she wanted to make the rebellion somewhat genuine. It is possible that she knew or expected that Yellow and Blue would refuse to leave her alone, even if she rebelled from them. It is possible that she truly believed that leading the rebellion as a diamond was detrimental because Earth would never be truly free, and neither would she. I do think it's really up in the air at this point, and it's a mixture of both. Again, I do think we need to see more of Rose as a character before we make the final verdict. I don't think that Rose was entirely selfish, but I don't agree that she was selfless either. She exists in that morally gray area. She had the power to change things from the top, but she decided not to do so. Whether or not it was because of selfish reasons or because of her love of Earth and lack of faith in the diamonds is debatable. It's important to note that Rose, while she was known as Pink Diamond, had a lot of power and influence over what the Diamond Authority could change to. Maybe not directly because she needs to prove herself first, but she had the potential to change everything if she wanted to. Of course, it would be a lot more difficult than just faking her own shattering, however. And that's why I'm personally on the fence about how she decided to do things. As a diamond, she kind of had this opportunity to change things for everyone, but instead her final decision led to nothing but grief and death. And I know she had the best intentions, or at least most of her intentions were good-natured, even if her motivations were flawed. Personally, I don't think Rose's intentions were malicious or mean-spirited. I do think that she had the best intentions in mind, but she was very self-oriented and impulsive while making said decisions. I don't think that she thought about how these things would affect others, at least not extensively. So, to answer the question, does this make Rose a bad person? Well, in my opinion, I don't think she was an awful person, but she certainly wasn't a good person either. I think she's a bad person because of the effect that she has on those close to her and those around her, because she's impulsive and goes through with what she wants despite the negative side effects. While she did save the Earth, at least temporarily, she did so much damage to the people and the Foundation around her. And to that note, the Earth wasn't even saved. If Steven hadn't befriended Peridot, the cluster would have destroyed it by now. So personally, I don't think that Rose was a good person, but I also don't think she was intentionally awful either. Now, to clarify, this doesn't mean that I hate Rose. I actually love her as a character because this makes her a lot more interesting instead of the bland, perfect hero trope. However, you can acknowledge that a character isn't the best person in the world while appreciating their characterization. And that's where I am with Rose. She's a very interesting and complex character, but she's not the best person. But hey, that's just my opinion. Make sure to leave your insights down below and take the poll on my community tab to see what the verdict is. And if you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to see more content from me. And I will see you all in the next video.